Welcome to the 7th show of Above the Octagon. I'm Jonathan Pertile, taking you through all the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Now, you're in for a treat. This is the first time I'm recording this particular show via video camera. Head on to YouTube, type in Jonathan Pertile, that's JonathanPertile, and you'll be able to see the highlights, but in video form. I'm going to sync the video and audio up, and so it still sounds good, and I'm really looking forward to you watching it. I've done a few of these things before. For instance, I've interviewed Speed Cuba Felix Zemdegs. He has over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. But one of the reasons why I didn't get this going firstly is because I broke my fibula. And I broke my fibula, I fell off my bike, and I'm still recovering from it, but I'm in a position where I don't have to wear crutches or put my leg on a chair. So that's one of the reasons why I kind of avoided it in the first place, but still haven't missed a show even days after surgery. So now that I can do it, even though I'm still healing, I'll do it. So make sure you head on to my YouTube channel to see the highlights in video form. I've got a massive show, GSP and Michael Bisping. It's happening. The date hasn't been announced yet, and that's deliberate. They still want to find out the finer details. GSP is making his comeback. Eddie Alvarez is going to make his return after losing his lightweight belt to Conor McGregor, and Dustin Poirier is his opponent, which is an action-packed fight. Although GSP and Michael Bisping wanted to fight each other, they couldn't. They couldn't reach an agreement. Well, George St-Pierre was the real issue here, because the UFC, as a promotion, as a business, naturally want to profit over fights. They want to make the most money. It's their company. It makes sense. George St-Pierre has a very good sponsorship deal with Under Armour, but with the Reebok deal coming in, which states that all fighting gear in the Octagon itself, when you're about to do an official bout, it must be under the Reebok banner. So that is something that restricts George St-Pierre and his intake of money from sponsorship deals. But at the end of the day, the fighters have had to evolve with this change. It can't always be what it once was. You have to move forward. And George St-Pierre is widely considered to be one of the greatest welterweights of all time, and rightly so. You look at the contenders he's beaten, such as BJ Penn, Nick Diaz, Carlos Condit. The list goes on and on. Matt Hughes. So he's jumping up a weight class to fight Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping has competed in the light heavyweight division before, so not just in the middleweight division where they are scheduled to fight in, but he's a large guy. George St-Pierre has a long reach though. So even though Michael Bisping stands at about 6'1", 6'2", and George St-Pierre is about 5'10", 5'11", the reach won't be as significant a factor as one might think. George St-Pierre is very athletic. He uses his skills well. The kicks, the elbows, the punches, and the wrestling. He is an extremely good grappler. Elite. When you are blessed with that athleticism, blessed with the competitive mindset that GSP has, no matter what fight you're in, you're always going to be a chance. And let's be honest here. Is Michael Bisping the best middleweight in the world? That's debatable. He almost lost to Dan Henderson He won via unanimous decision. I can't remember correctly what it was, but he definitely won the decision. Whether it was majority or unanimous, I forget. I think it was majority. But Dan Henderson was about 45 years of age. He was in his 40s when he fought Michael Bisping in a rematch, of which Dan Henderson won the first one. So Michael Bisping has taken 2 fights where he hasn't taken on a middleweight contender, one of the true title contenders, such as Yoel Romero, who is an extremely explosive fighter, an Olympic wrestler, and he's not fighting him. But he says he will fight him after the GSP fight. Now, can we believe him? Of course we can. Michael Bisping has accepted every fight that's put in front of him. Or rather not accepted, he takes on fights. He's one of these fighters that he's a fighter. Whereas George St-Pierre, he's a fighter, but he's also a great athlete. So you're going to have this great mix between athleticism and fighting. And George St-Pierre has a very well-rounded game. Michael Bisping has excellent boxing. He's knocked out Luke Rockhold, and he also knocked down, but didn't defeat him via knockout, Anderson Silva with his left hand. So George St-Pierre will have to be wary, but it's not an impossible task for GSP to go up a weight class and defeat Michael Bisping. Daniel Cormier and Anthony Johnson at UFC 210, Buffalo, New York, April the 8th. And this is a rematch of the first fight. Daniel Cormier won via submission. He choked Rumble Johnson, who then tapped. But Anthony Johnson had his moments. In fact, he actually rocked Daniel Cormier, and I mean rocked. Go watch the highlights. He hit him with a lethal right hand, but Daniel Cormier stood back up. And that's something we didn't see Glover Teixeira do when he was caught with Anthony Johnson's right hand, and that's no shame at all. Anthony Johnson possesses probably the most lethal hands in the light heavyweight division. He's a very strong guy. Daniel Cormier's expertise, so to speak, is in wrestling. So Anthony Johnson will be looking to inflict his expertise on Daniel Cormier, whereas Daniel Cormier, as a specialist in wrestling, will be looking to wrestle Anthony Johnson. Now, Daniel Cormier has said that he's not just looking to wrestle, he also wants to box or trade with Anthony Johnson. Is that a good decision, tactically speaking? We're going to find out whether he upholds that or he withdraws somewhat and sticks with wrestling. As a fan, you look at this fight and both fighters on any given day can win. It's about who has the better day on that night. If it is a night fight, in fact, I'm not quite sure. But will Anthony Johnson come in with a mindset that, okay, he's already lost to Daniel Cormier? Does his confidence go down or does it go up because he's really motivated to get that win back? That can happen. So Daniel Cormier has to be motivated to defend his title, which he is. They're both two extremely hard workers, two great fighters, and it should be an entertaining fight. Remember that fight. The one I am going to analyze is between Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva. Not their second fight. Anderson Silva won both times, but I'm going to analyze the first fight. This took place at UFC 117, August the 7th, 2010. It went 5 rounds, but it didn't finish At the end of the 5th round, it was almost done, but not quite. I think there was a good minute to go yet. But up until that moment, Anderson Silva looked like his undefeated record in the UFC would be gone. He looked invincible. If he was not undefeated, he may have lost once, I'm not quite sure, but he was on a tear, and he's widely considered Anderson Silva to be one of the greatest of all time, which he is. And he beat Chael Sonnen in the first fight via a triangle choke. In the previous rounds, Chael Sonnen had real success, and I mean great success, at taking down Anderson Silva, negating away Anderson Silva's stand-up game, which is very technical. He is a superb counter-striker, and Chael Sonnen swarmed on him on the ground. But the art of jiu-jitsu, the triangle choke, you can fight not only standing up, but when you're on the ground. This is something that can separate fighters on any given day. If you have the ground game, you don't mind being taken down. And if you want to, but it depends. You can either be on top, or you can either be in guard, half guard at the bottom. It's about what you're comfortable with. Some fighters find certain positions more favorable than others. In jiu-jitsu, full guard is one of the most preferable positions because you can trap their body and go for a submission, whether that's a triangle choke, a guillotine. The list goes on. Anderson Silva won this fight when he shouldn't have. He was getting dominated by Chael Sonnen. And Chael Sonnen looked like, for all intents and purposes, that he would be the next middleweight champion. But Anderson Silva, like all great champions do, find a way. And sometimes a true measure of excellence is not when everything is going well, but it's when you're challenged. Anderson Silva was challenged, and he came through as the victor.